It's time for a GB News exclusive, and two of Britain's worst paedophiles, who led one of the first convicted grooming gangs in the country, are set to be free in months. Evil Abid Mohammed Sadiq and Mohammed Rahman Laikat were part of a 9-man gang which abused 26 girls in a reign of terror in the city of Derby. Both married with children, they cruised around the city streets in a BMW with blacked-out windows and carried out sickening abuse on the girls while their unsuspecting families waited for them at home. They also drove a Range Rover, which Sadiq dubbed the Rape Rover. In 2011, Sadiq was told that he would have to serve at least 11 years in jail and Laikat 8 years. The gang are feared to have attacked 100 women, and in one case, it was the first of its kind in the country, which echoed other crime patterns discovered in Rochdale, Rotherham and Telford. The parole board said Sadiq is referred for his parole review, while Laikat was recommended for open prison conditions in December, sparking fears that he will be out in months and released. Well, in a moment, I'm going to speak to Maggie Oliver, ex-detective and founder of the Maggie Oliver Foundation. But first, I'm joined by Elizabeth, who's a grooming gang's survivor. Elizabeth, thank you very, very much for joining us here on Patrick Christie's Tonight. You know what it's like to be face-to-face with these people when they are released back into the community, which is what victims are scared of. What's your views on this? And do you feel as though maybe people like yourself are sadly put last?
We are definitely put last, you know. We're never seen as a victim. We're at the bottom of the pile. Basically what we see is the criminals actually being treated with 5-star treatment as a victim. My perpetrator, which GBNews has covered quite a lot on, Ashgar Boston, he went to prison for 9 years. After 2.5 years, he was let into open conditions on a risk assessment of that he was a low-risk absconder. This is what they're getting assessed on, if they're going to do a runner from an open prison and things like that. We're just seeing it, it's just a repetitive pattern at the moment. And
you, I believe, did have to come face-to-face with one of your attackers when they were released, is that right?
Right, basically he was recalled back to prison in February. He'd got licence conditions that he was not allowed back in Rotherham. My friend has gone to the local rubbish tip and come face to face with him. And what I obviously rang the victim liaison officer, and what I got was basically that they didn't take third-party intelligence and they wouldn't report it to the police. I had to do it myself. It transpired after a week that he was arrested and in custody.
OK, and do you feel as though, when you hear these stories, that potentially the people who terrorised the women and girls of Derby are possibly about to be released? Do you think that's right? Do you think that's fair? Do you think they've served their time and they should be allowed back out on the streets?
The time served will never be enough. You know, we've gone from the failings from the authority, the abuse, going through the judicial process, which is not easy because of bail times and then court times, and then to have them coming back and being presented with the fear, it's not nice, and we shouldn't have to go through it. And when I hear stories like this, it's sickening.
Well, I think it certainly must feel a bit like you're always the bottom of the pile when it comes to this stuff. And I think the idea that we can have time and time again people who commit the most heinous atrocities, given very, very minuscule sentences, given the crimes that they've committed, and then potentially have to go back to their own hometowns and bump into the victims, people like yourself, or survivors, really, I should call you. I think it makes a lot of people feel very, very sick to their stomach. And I would just like to thank you, Elizabeth, for coming on and being brave enough to share your story and your experiences with us tonight here on GB News. So thank you very, very much. And
am I all right just to add one thing though, Patrick?
Yeah, go on, yeah.
I just want to basically say that if any victims and survivors are out there, just to know that they're not on their own, that there's people fighting for them. campaigners like myself and the Maggie Oliver Foundation as well.
Yeah, no, it's just really important that you said that, and thank you very, very much for coming on and saying that. And actually, I can bring in now former detective and the founder and chair of the Maggie Oliver Foundation. It's a charity fighting, as you just heard there, and advocating for adult victims and survivors of child sexual abuse. It is Maggie Oliver. Maggie, look, thank you so much. We heard from Elizabeth there. I will just stress that's not her real name. We've protected her anonymity there. About the situation that she faced, which is when these people are released from prison, all too often they go back into their own communities. You look at these people now who are about to be potentially released. They used to drive around in something called the Rape Rover. They are one of the first ever cases. It was in Derby. It was massively widespread. 8 years, 11 years. It's nothing, is it, realistically, the time they served? What do you make of this?
What I'd say, Patrick, first of all, is that, Elizabeth's case, this case is not they're not isolated cases. This is the norm. And I think what this case shows to me more than anything is what a postcode lottery it is. First of all, as to whether these men are sentenced to enough time in prison. There'll never be enough time. But when I compare, for instance, this case with the Rochdale case that I'm known for, one of the men there, for instance, who raped a 12-year-old child, got her pregnant at 13, he was out of prison in less than 4 years. He was walking around Rochdale, bumped into the child that he abused. She didn't even know that he was out of prison. I've got questions about this case. Have the victims been consulted? Do they know, without the reporting of the media, would they know that these men were up for parole? Your viewers will probably be surprised to know that there is no right for a victim to be consulted unless they actually fight for that right. It is not actually put to them that their abusers are coming out of prison. It's very much a postcode lottery. And the sentencing is random. Victims in the criminal justice system are not seen as a victim. They are viewed as witnesses. They are a commodity. They don't matter. The rights and the powers that be gather around the abusers. They are the ones that end up protected. So for me, this raises so many issues way beyond this case. It's about the system. It's about the lack of victims' rights. Elizabeth is a fighter. She's found her voice. There are many, many other victims who don't have a voice at all. And unless, programs like yours highlight where these failures occur and the impact it has on their victims, then we will never see any changes. Is it long enough? Have they been in prison long enough? I would say probably no.
It's more, I think it's more the part, I mean, that is very important, obviously, but I think it's more also the fact that these people could end up, as has happened repeatedly, time and time again, they could end up bumping into their victims at the shops, or even in some cases getting a job as a delivery food driver. Someone orders a takeaway and they get the knock on the door to say that your Chinese is here or whatever, and it's your abuser standing there in front of you, and we are not tough enough when it comes to that. And you think that victims will not have been told that they're about to be released?
I think a very good possibility they haven't. Ruby didn't know that Adil Khan was out of prison. She bumped into him in the local supermarket. He was in unsupervised contact with another child, Amber, in Rochdale. You quite rightly say, she ordered a takeaway. One of her key abusers knocked on the door. She had her own little girl there, who opened the door, and to see her abuser stood on the doorstep. He had never even gone to prison. There are so many holes in the system that need plugging, and we have to keep the awareness going in order to fight for the changes that we need.
Well, Maggie, thank you very, very much for coming on the show. I do hope to talk to you again very soon. That is Maggie Oliver there, who's doing wonderful work when it comes to exposing this stuff and also helping people who are victims, who are survivors.